Hi, I'm Joy, and I'm glad you're here. Today, I want to talk to you about something I know you're experiencing. Watching a movie in English and not being able to enjoy it because you rely on subtitles. In this video, I want to show you how you can change that, step by step, and start feeling like each scene becomes your best English lesson ever. Has this ever happened to you? The movie goes too fast, the words blur together, and by the time you're reading the subtitles, you've already missed the actor's expression or the story's details. It's exhausting to feel like you're spending more time reading than listening, and that little voice creeps in, "My English is never good enough." That discomfort not only frustrates, it also saps the will to keep trying. Let me tell you something. This is completely normal. It happens to everyone learning English, even those who seem to understand everything naturally these days. No one starts out understanding every single dialogue. The good news is that there are simple ways to train your ear and enjoy it without the pressure of understanding word for word. Yes, you can achieve it too, and much sooner than you think. I want to tell you about Sophia, a 20-year-old student who loved movies. She started out convinced she'd soon leave subtitles behind, but the speed of the dialogue overwhelmed her. She paused scenes so often that the movie lost its meaning. What began with enthusiasm turned into frustration, and little by little, she began to feel like she might never make it. One night, Sophia tried to watch her favorite series in English, and between pauses and sighs, she broke down. "What's wrong with me? Why can't I ever understand?" That insecurity hit her hard and made her think she might never move forward. And if you've ever said the same thing to yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone. What Sophia felt is exactly what many of us have felt. I know this discomfort isn't unique to you. More than once, you sit down to watch a movie with the excitement of practicing your English, and in a matter of minutes, the experience turns into a reading marathon. Your eyes dart back and forth between the subtitles and the screen, and when you finally finish reading what they said, you've already missed the expression, the gesture, the emotion of the scene. It's frustrating because what should be a moment of enjoyment almost becomes a chore. The hardest part is when the speed of the dialogue feels unattainable. The characters speak quickly, the words are strung together without pause, and you think, will I ever reach that level? That feeling of always being one step behind is exhausting because instead of relaxing and connecting with the story, you're fighting with your own ear. And the harder you try, the more obvious the gap between your English and what you hear becomes. Many of us end up with the feeling that we're not making any progress. It's as if everything we studied in classes or books disappear when we're faced with real English. Frustration sets in. No matter how much effort you put in, it never seems to be enough. That inner voice starts whispering that maybe you don't have an ear for the language, or that there's simply no point in trying. And the truth is, when the experience is repeated, one begins to avoid it. Why look at something in English if in the end you're left with the same feeling of emptiness? The sad thing is that this avoidance only fuels insecurity, because the less you practice, the harder it becomes to face it again. It's a vicious cycle that slowly undermines confidence, without you even realizing it. The curious thing is that this pain doesn't only come from the language, but also from expectations. We go into it believing we'll understand everything, and when we discover we don't, we punish ourselves. Instead of accepting that it's part of the process, we experience it as a failure. And in that internal clash, the desire to learn fades. But let me tell you, That struggle you feel today has a deeper meaning than you imagine. And here begins the interesting twist, because what seems like a dead end can turn out to be a sign that you're on the right path. Frustration isn't a definitive obstacle, but rather a starting point that, if you look at it differently, opens the door to a different kind of hope. Want to see how? Let me tell you something that will probably ease the pressure you're feeling. Absolutely everyone learning English goes through the same thing. No one starts out understanding every word in a movie, no matter how motivated they are. Even those who seem to have mastered the language have once been there, frustrated, pausing scenes, convinced they'd never make it. What you feel today isn't a sign of inability, but a natural part of the journey. And here's the good part. You don't have to wait to be fluent to start enjoying it. The secret is to train your ear little by little without obsessing over perfection. You can start with something as simple as choosing movies you've already seen in your language and re-watching them in English. Since you already know the story, your brain takes a break from the plot and pays more attention to how the words sound. That simple adjustment changes everything. Another practical option is to turn on English subtitles instead of those in your native language. This creates a powerful bridge. As you read, your ear associates the sound with the writing. Over time, that connection grows stronger, and almost without realizing it, your mind begins to recognize words before you read them. It's not about magic, but about conscious repetition, about giving your ear the practice it needs. And the best part is you don't have to do it with sacrifice or boredom. Think of a short series, one that hooks you from the first episode. Try the experiment of watching it only in English, accepting that you won't grasp everything at first. That consistency, coupled with a genuine interest in the story, makes your progress much faster than you imagine. It's the power of habit, disguised as entertainment. Of course, at first, you'll feel like you're missing out on details, but that's normal. The important thing is to resist the temptation to give up or return to the comfort of subtitles in your language. Every scene you watch carefully, even if you only understand 50% of it, is building the foundation of your listening. And believe me, there will come a time when you'll surprise yourself by understanding complete sentences without having to look down. That day feels like a small personal triumph, almost an awakening. And that's when you discover that this whole process isn't a punishment, but an opportunity. Because even though the climb may feel steep now, you're actually closer than you think. And that's precisely where someone else's story can help you see what's next. I want you to imagine with me Sophia, a 20-year-old girl who, like you, dreamed of enjoying English language films. Every time she sat down in front of the screen, she did so with excitement. She thought that little by little, she'd be able to turn off the subtitles. For a while, that hope kept her going, convinced that she'd soon notice a change. But that expectation became a burden when reality didn't match. At first, Sophia was enthusiastic, even setting herself weekly challenges. This time, I'm going to watch just 10 minutes without subtitles, she repeated to herself. And even if she succeeded, the effort seemed exhausting. It was like running a marathon without preparation. By the end, she'd be left with no energy, a saturated mind, and a feeling of not having enjoyed anything. That mixture of tiredness and discouragement grew stronger with each attempt. Over time, the speed of the dialogue began to become a difficult barrier to climb. Sophia paused the film so often that she lost track of the story. She wanted to understand every detail, but this obsession with not missing anything ended up destroying the plot's rhythm. Instead of an exciting journey, the film became an endless exercise that sapped all the charm of cinema. And of course, that frustration seeped into her daily life. When her friends talked about the latest hit series, she smiled awkwardly because she knew she hadn't been able to watch it all in English. That silent comparison made her feel left behind, as if her efforts weren't enough. What began as a hobby ended up becoming a constant source of insecurity. However, Sophia didn't stop trying. Deep down, she knew the problem wasn't a lack of ability, but rather the way she was approaching the challenge. That recognition was painful at first because it meant accepting that she needed to change her approach. But it also opened the door to something new. The possibility of learning while enjoying it, without the pressure of understanding everything. And on one of those nights, just when she seemed to be giving up, something happened. It was then that she found herself face to face with the most uncomfortable question of all, the one that usually appears when patience runs out and insecurity strikes hard. And it was that moment that marked the climax of her story. One night, Sophia decided to give her favorite series another chance. She prepared everything. The room was silent, the screen ready, and the spirit of, this time, I'd really make it. The first few minutes seemed promising, but soon the dialogues began to race by again. The sentences slid like water through her fingers, and no matter how hard she tried to catch them, she felt like nothing was clear in her mind. The pause became his constant companion. Each scene paused again and again, as if he needed to breathe after each line. But what should have been a moment of enjoyment turned into an exhausting battle. And it was in the midst of that struggle that the question escaped his lips, almost like a sigh. What's wrong with me? Why can't I ever understand? That moment was a crushing blow, because it wasn't just frustration with the series, but with herself. Doubt began to entangle her mind. Maybe she wasn't good at languages. Maybe she would never make it. That insecurity hung over her like a shadow, making her feel like all her previous efforts had been in vain. And worse, she began to believe it wasn't worth continuing. What hurt most wasn't not understanding every word, but the feeling of being left out of something she loved. Cinela, which had always been her refuge, now seemed to remind her of her limits. This contradiction disarmed her. She wanted to learn, but the experience made her feel small, incapable, far from what she had once dreamed of. And although Sophia didn't know it at the time, that night marked a turning point in her journey. Because when frustration hits rock bottom, it also opens up space for something new. It's there that the opportunity to rethink the way we learn arises, and to discover that what seemed impossible can be transformed with the right approach. That was the spark that would later lead her to understand that she wasn't alone in this process. That what today seemed like an insurmountable limit actually hid the opportunity to start over with a different perspective, with a different strategy. But before talking about that, I want to show you how you too can escape from that same place where Sophia felt trapped.